Tokyo opened higher after government data showed the world's third largest economy grew 0.5% in the January to March quarter, despite expectations for a mild contraction. The Chinese stock market ended lower as trade tensions between China and the United States dragged on, with the focus being fixed on the sticking point of technology transfer. And in the biggest news out of the Far East, US internet giant Google, whose Android mobile operating system powers most of the world's smartphones, said it was beginning to cut ties with China's Huawei, which Washington considers a national security threat. The move could have dramatic implications for Huawei smartphone users, as the telecoms giant will no longer have access to Google's proprietary services, which include the Gmail and Google Maps apps. The benchmark Nikkei rose 0.25% to 21,301 points. The Shanghai Composite Index was down 0.4% at close, ending the day at 2,870 points. The Hang Seng was down 0.6%, ending the day at 27,790 points. Wall Street stocks finished a volatile session solidly lower on Friday as worries over US-China trade relations more than offset strong consumer data and other more conciliatory trade developments. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the week at 25,764, a loss of 0.4% in the session. The broad-based S&P 500 dropped 0.6% to close at 2,859, while the tech-rich Nasdaq Composite Index tumbled 1% to end at 7,816 points. For more on the market news, we cross to my colleague Arabile Gumede, who's standing by at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Very good afternoon to you, Arabile. Lots of red on the board behind you, and it seems like that Huawei news is affecting even our markets here.
Yeah, it certainly is, isn't it, Nzinga? So some sentiment of negativity filtering through then from Asia, and of course from last week Friday, where we saw negativity come through from the United States as well. So today's market going down more than 1% thus far. One of the big losers as well is Naspers, so a key component, and sentiment coming through from out in Asia as well, with the Hang Seng sitting down. So clearly that's meant that the local market has also suffered, unfortunately. So things aren't necessarily looking too good with the Rand as well, weakening a touch. So a whole host of factors, including that trade deal. And even though talks aren't necessarily continuing right now, the market is still feeling the pinch when it comes to that, as it feels that the talks themselves may indeed continue for longer than initially expected. Let's take a look at exactly what the numbers look like, and we'll dissect that information in just a bit. Well, as you can tell, the market there looking not so rosy across most indices there. So let's take a look and unpack exactly what has happened thus far. Joined by Bright Kumalo from Vestact Asset Management. Bright, thank you so much for the time, bud. Thanks. 1.25%. It just keeps going getting lower. When I arrived here, it was just below 1%. Now we continue headed down. What is the factor actually now hitting the market locally?
Look, unfortunately, I want to say the obvious answer, which is still the trade war. But there's some finer detail now in the negotiations, right? Basically, China says we're not going to negotiate if there's a threat of tariffs, overhanging us this whole time. It's like, it's no longer negotiation, it's coercion, essentially, right? And they don't want to be coerced into a deal that they don't want. And they've just said basically, you know what, we'll hunker down and you just expect, more protracted trade war, basically, because, if you look at the US and you look at China and you can look at the two countries, which one, can stand a protracted trade war, I think China is set for it because, they've been outside of the economies anyways and they're self-sustaining, whereas the US, they've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. So I think, China won't be worse off, but the US will be worse off in the interim.
Yeah, China last week also said that this trade deal would not bring the country to zero and bring them to their knees. They will be able to sustain this and be okay with the situation. But the question becomes,
which is what they're doing.
And they continue to do that, right? Yeah. There is a country of innovation and the like, so they can self-sustain. What happens with regards to Huawei, however? That ban coming into place And now Google's saying we will no longer provide you with any services, so any Huawei phones no longer get the likes of YouTube, Gmail, none of those, even Google Maps, for example.
Yep.
No updates to the current Huawei phones. How much does that hurt?
Look, I'd like to say hi to all my friends who just were tweeting about the Huawei P30. Serves you right. It's sad what's happening currently, especially for those consumers that actually have gone out and bought these devices, right?
Yeah.
This is not only just Huawei, by the way, that's affected. We've got Qualcomm, we've got Intel,
Yeah.
all the chip makers, Broadcom.
Which are American companies, I might add.
99% of them are, Taiwanese or, American and
Yeah.
Taiwanese. So it's bad. It's not looking good. And this is what happens, when two giants fight. It's the little man that suffers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you have a Huawei phone or a Huawei device for that matter, this is the last generation that's going to get support and updates, and the next stuff unfortunately won't have any Alphabet or Google
Interesting
related,
element though is
apps,
that Huawei has said that they have been looking to develop an operating system since 2012.
Sorry, I was about to say they've
Now's
been
the time, right?
they've been working on their own OS for a while now.
Yeah.
I think it's go time is now. We need to see the first pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how easily would that penetrate the market? Because now you're going beyond the grain of the two that are currently in play. And of course, Microsoft has looked to obviously try and invent and recreate their own one, but
OS,
they always find a way to...
The mobile one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily work out as well. This becomes a fourth one in the sector.
Look, they've got a big number of devices, about 1.5 billion devices currently on the Huawei network.
Yeah.
It's going to be very easy to distribute that OS. Just that, is it something you want to use? Is it something that's going to be friendly like Google? Or is it just going to be, tacky? I don't know. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, because if they get into it, then it might look the same as Google. Then you enter into lawsuits because it's now infringement and copyright.
There's a lot of antitrust issues that are pending, especially in Europe, specifically on that OS.
Okay, so an interesting story continues, and we'll see how that one unpacks.
Yeah.
Still in Asia, though, Japan.
Yep.
Getting, instead of contracting in their economy, 0.2%,
yeah.
they go up instead.
Yes.
How better is that now for that economy?
Look, so it's not like a story of their own prowess. It's just that imports went down less than exports.
Okay.
So they went faster than exports. So it's net, the economy actually grew 2.1%. It's incredible what's happening in that very, very, very big economy. But again, we're not seeing any growth in that economy. So they're still, buckling down, unfortunately. There hasn't been any growth. I mean, that's also a reflection of the whole economy. Global economy. It's not just unique to them.
Yeah.
You look at Europe currently, you look at Germany, you look at the UK, things are not going where they're supposed to be going, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I mean, they're set to actually, that's Japan, they're set to increase their, what we know as VAT, of course, their sales tax as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of people worried about the slowdown in that economy continuing to filter through. All right. If we take a look at things locally then as well, the Rand continues to, I suppose, weaken ever so slightly. But the hope would have been that President Cyril Ramaphosa would have brought in a new Ramaphosa, right?
2.0.
Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that, Ramaphosa sending the Rand to 11, unfortunately. And what it means for the MPC chats is that nothing happens to the rates, right? We stay where we are. We're not going to see that rates cut, unfortunately. And another factor contributing to that is the oil price. We saw the Saudi energy minister coming and saying, they're gently keeping inventories low, and they're seeing tepid demand. I don't know what that means. It means the demand is warming up, but unfortunately, that's not good for South Africa. For a country that depends a lot on that oil price. Unfortunately, right now it's very high for us.
And the Middle East, there continues to be tension between the Iran necessarily and the United States, right? Donald Trump even saying that any conflict would be officially the end of Iran. Like, I mean, what are you planning to do here? Destroy a whole country?
I absolutely have no idea what's happening in that man's head.
Oh,
unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Taking a look at the remainder of the week, we've spoken about the MPC, but will it hinge a little bit on that inflation figure? I know, it will be historical by the time it comes out for them, but really just looking at where your starting point is, and of course the fear becomes, as they move into next year,
Yep.
what their projections are for that inflation rate.
So the thing is, everyone was expecting inflation to tick up for some reason, but that hasn't actually happened.
Yeah.
So which means the rates are not going to go up either. So
Yeah.
the inflation story is playing to our advantage for now. Now what we need as a country is, fix our small problems, well big one, ESCOM,
Yeah,
for example. And once we get that and we get the economy running and we get that growth that we need, all of that together will go into the right direction for the economy, and then you will see it trickling down to the shares that you're seeing on your screen, because growth breeds jobs and consumer confidence, and people buy more stuff, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, this
Yeah.
cycle of positivity. But we seem not to be getting the first step into getting that car started, if I have to say it that way. Yeah.
All right. Well, right. Appreciate your time, bud.
Lovely being here.
Whole host of negativity there. 3.5% lower than for Naspers at present. And that situation really based on a little bit of negativity coming through from Asian stocks, of course, because Tencent, which is a subsidiary of Naspers, owned then in part by Naspers, is certainly hurting, and that has certainly found its way into the local market.